Dr. Vixara Tulani adjusted her atmospheric sensors as she walked through the busy streets of New Singapore, her crystalline form catching the morning sunlight. As the Centaurian Confederacy's leading xenoanthropologist, she had studied 17 sentient species, but humans continued to perplex her. Today marked her third month observing humanity in their natural habitat, and something wasn't adding up. Her previous research subjects, the peaceful Andromedans, the methodical Rigelians, even the warrior-like Proximas, all followed predictable behavioral patterns. Humans defied categorization. She paused at a playground, her sensors recording everything. Two small human children were engaged in what their parents called play fighting, using plastic tubes as mock weapons. Their laughter echoed across the park, a sound that should have been incongruous with their aggressive movements. Fascinating, isn't it? Professor Rajesh Patel materialized beside her, his dark eyes twinkling. As her human liaison, he had become accustomed to finding her lost in observation. Most species either evolve as predators or prey. Humans somehow ended up as both. Vixara's crystalline structure shifted in confusion, creating a subtle chiming sound. That's biologically impossible, Professor. Yet here we are. Rajesh gestured toward the playground. Watch closely. As if on cue, a larger child approached the playing pair, attempting to take one of their toys. Within seconds, the scene transformed. The previously playful children formed a united front, their mock combat movements suddenly precise and purposeful. The bully retreated, leaving Vixara's sensors struggling to process the rapid shift in behavior patterns. Did you see it? Rajesh asked quietly. The switch. From play to protection in 2.3 seconds, Vixara confirmed, her crystalline form vibrating with excitement. But that's not what fascinates me most, Professor. It's the fact that they immediately returned to play afterward, as if nothing happened. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion down the street. A hovercraft had malfunctioned, careening toward a group of pedestrians. Before Vixara could even process the danger, she witnessed humanity's dual nature in full display. A woman who seconds ago had been delicately sipping tea through a straw transformed into a blur of motion, tackling two children out of the vehicle's path. A businessman in an expensive suit didn't hesitate to jump in front of the craft, using his augmented strength bracelet to absorb the impact and redirect it away from the crowd. Computer, mark timestamp for detailed analysis, Vixara commanded, her scientific detachment wavering as she watched the aftermath. The same humans who had just performed extraordinary feats of courage were now awkwardly accepting thanks, some even apologizing for torn clothes or spilled drinks. Professor, she turned to Rajesh, her crystalline form pulsing with realization. I've been approaching this all wrong. We've been classifying humans based on their peaceful achievements, art, music, literature. But those aren't adaptations for survival, are they? Rajesh smiled, but there was something ancient in his eyes. No, they're not. They're what we created once we'd mastered survival itself. Humanity's greatest trick wasn't learning to kill or learning to create. It was learning to choose between the two. As the sun set over New Singapore, Vixara began composing her preliminary report to the Confederacy. Her opening line would shake the scientific community. Earth is not, as previously classified, a death world because of its hostile environment. It is a death world because it created something unique in the galaxy, a species that carries both paradise and predator within its DNA. The children's laughter still echoed from the playground, but now Vixara understood it for what it was, not just an expression of joy, but a luxury earned through millions of years of being the most successful predator on a world full of them. Humanity hadn't evolved beyond their predatory nature. They had simply learned to leash it, to direct it, to use it not just for survival, but for protection. And that, she realized, made them more fascinating, and perhaps more dangerous, than any species she had ever studied. 3 weeks after the hovercraft incident, Dr. Vixara found herself in the Orbital Research Station's observation deck, her crystalline form reflecting the Earth's blue glow. The data patterns on her screens told a story that both frightened and fascinated her. "You've been analyzing that footage for days," said Commander Rajiv, her feathered crest rippling with concern. The avian Regelian had become Vixora's closest confidant on the station. "What are you seeing that the rest of us missed?" Vixora gestured to the holographic display, where hundreds of human interaction scenarios played simultaneously. "Look at these behavioral patterns. Humans have rules, Naira. Unwritten, unspoken rules that govern when they shift from peaceful to predatory state." The footage showed various scenarios: a mother lifting a ground car to save her child, a teacher shielding students from a laboratory explosion, a teenager fighting off 3 armed robbers to protect an elderly stranger. Each incident showed the same pattern: normal humans transforming into devastating warriors, then seamlessly returning to their peaceful states. "Computer, play interaction sequence 47B," Vixora commanded. The display focused on security footage from a diplomatic reception last month. A drunk Proximan diplomat had grabbed a human waitress inappropriately. Within seconds, 3 other humans had responded, not with diplomatic protests, but with precise, controlled violence that ended the situation in moments. "Notice how they didn't kill him," Vixora pointed out. "They could have. Based on my analysis, at least 2 of those humans had military training. But they used exactly enough force to stop the threat, nothing more." Naira's feathers rustled uncomfortably. "You're saying they have some sort of built-in restraint system?" "More like protocols," Vixora explained, her crystalline form pulsing with excitement. "Lines that, when crossed, trigger an immediate predatory response. But the response is proportional to the transgression. It's not just instinct. It's controlled, cultivated instinct." Their discussion was interrupted by a station-wide alert. A cargo ship had suffered a catastrophic failure and was on collision course with the civilian section of the station. As warning sirens blared, Vixora found herself with a front-row seat to another demonstration of humanity's unique nature. The human crew members moved with frightening efficiency. Within moments, they had organized both humans and aliens into emergency teams. When the cargo ship's automated systems failed, 3 human engineers volunteered to spacewalk into the radioactive breach to manually override the controls. "They're going to die," Naira whispered, watching the humans don their inadequate protective suits. "The radiation levels." But they didn't die. The humans pushed through radiation that should have incapacitated them, manually redirected the cargo ship, and returned to the station. Their bodies were damaged, yes, but their will remained unbroken. In the medical bay afterward, Vixora interviewed one of the engineers, a woman named Lieutenant Kai Winters, whose radiation burns were still being treated. "Why did you volunteer?" Vixora asked. The risk assessment clearly showed a survival probability of less than 20%. Kai's laugh turned into a painful cough. There were 3,000 people on that civilian deck. The math was simple: 3 lives versus 3,000. "But that's not logical," Vixora insisted. "Self-preservation is a fundamental biological imperative." "Maybe for other species," Kai said, her eyes drifting closed as the pain medication took effect. "But humans, we decided long ago that there are things worth dying for. And that decision, that choice to override our own survival instinct, that's what makes us human." Later that night, Vixora added to her report, "Human behavioral protocols appear to operate on a hierarchical system. Personal survival, while important, is routinely subordinated to group survival. More significantly, humans have developed the ability to consciously override their own survival instincts in service of abstract concepts such as duty and sacrifice." She paused, considering her next words carefully. "This suggests that humanity's predatory nature has evolved beyond simple violence into something more complex, a protective drive so strong that individuals will knowingly risk death to fulfill it. This makes them not just dangerous, but unpredictable by conventional xenobiological standards." As she finished her report, Vixara watched Earth rotating below, its peaceful blue appearance belying the species it had produced. She was beginning to understand why some called humans the galaxy's greatest paradox, a species that had mastered violence not to destroy, but to protect. The question that troubled her sleep was simpler. What would happen if humanity ever decided that the galaxy itself needed their protection? The Sol System Xenological Institute buzzed with activity as Dr. Vixara compiled her latest observations. 6 months into her study of humanity, she had turned her attention to what might be the most baffling aspect of their nature, their recreational activities. They call this rugby, she explained to the assembled xenologists, her crystalline form projecting footage of a recent match. Distinguished representatives, she began, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's lights. 2 weeks ago, a Drachnid pirate fleet attempted to raid the Helios colony. What happened next has caused considerable alarm among member species. The holographic display activated, showing footage of the battle. The pirates had expected an easy target, a small mining colony with minimal defenses. Instead, they encountered something unprecedented. Notice how the human colonists responded. Vixara highlighted the footage. Within minutes of the first attack, every civilian facility had been repurposed for defense. Mining tools became weapons. Survey vessels became combat ships. Most remarkably, the colonists themselves transformed from peaceful miners into an organized military force. The chamber erupted in concerned whispers. A Drachnid representative, their scales shifting colors with agitation, spoke up. This is precisely our concern. How can we trust a species that harbors such militant capabilities beneath a peaceful exterior? With respect, Vixara countered, you're missing the crucial detail. Computer, show casualty figures. The numbers appeared. 0 civilian casualties. Minimal pirate casualties. Most of the pirate fleet had been disabled rather than destroyed, their crews captured alive. Humanity didn't just repel the attack, they did so with remarkable restraint, Vixara explained. They could have destroyed the entire pirate fleet. Instead, they chose to minimize loss of life on both sides. The footage shifted to the aftermath. Human colonists were shown providing medical care to injured pirates, even as they kept them under guard. One scene showed a human doctor working tirelessly to save a Drachnid raider who had tried to kill her minutes earlier. This is the paradox of humanity. Vixara continued. Their capacity for violence is matched only by their capacity for mercy. They are predators who choose to be protectors. A Rigelian diplomat raised a feathered appendage. But what triggered this transformation? Our reports show these were peaceful miners. Vixara activated another display, showing the initial moments of the attack. The pirates made a critical error. Their first shots damaged a school facility. No children were harmed, but the mere threat to their young triggered humanity's protective response. This confirms a pattern I've observed repeatedly. Humans become most dangerous not when they're threatened, but when they're protecting others. The chamber fell silent as she played her final piece of evidence, footage from the colony's aftermath. The mining operation had resumed within days, the colonists returning to their peaceful work as if nothing had happened. Children played in parks rebuilt by the same hands that had wielded weapons. Humanity's dual nature is not a flaw in their psychology, Vixara concluded. It's the key to their success as a species. They can switch between peaceful productivity and defensive violence because both aspects serve the same core drive, the protection and advancement of life. She paused, letting her next words carry weight. The question isn't whether we can trust humans. The question is whether we can afford not to. In an increasingly dangerous galaxy, their unique capabilities might be exactly what we need. As the council debated, Vixara received a message from Rajesh, watching the broadcast. You've given them a lot to think about. But you haven't told them everything, have you? She hadn't. Her private research had revealed something even more remarkable about humanity's protective instincts. They weren't limited to their own species. Humans had repeatedly demonstrated willingness to extend their protection to any being they considered under their care. The implications were both thrilling and terrifying. If humanity decided to extend their protective instincts to the galaxy at large, what would that mean for interstellar civilization? 1 year to the day after her first arrival on Earth, Dr. Vixara stood before a different audience. The University of New Singapore had gathered not just academics, but representatives from every major species in the galaxy. Her final presentation would either bridge the gap between humanity and the stars, or widen it forever. "We've been asking the wrong question," she began, her crystalline form glowing with conviction. "For decades, we've debated whether humans are predators or protectors. The truth is both more complex and simpler than we imagined." The holographic display activated, showing a three-dimensional map of human neural patterns. Humans didn't evolve beyond their predatory nature. They didn't suppress it. Instead, they did something unprecedented. They'd redirected it. The alien scientists watched in stunned silence as humans voluntarily slammed into each other at full speed, fighting for control of an oval ball. "This is entertainment?" asked Dr. Thor, his tentacles writhing in distress. The Aldebaranian scientist had studied war forms across the galaxy, but even he seemed disturbed. "They do this for fun." "Not just for fun," Vixara corrected, switching to footage of children being taught the sport. "It's considered educational. They believe these controlled combat simulations teach valuable life lessons about teamwork, strategy, and controlled aggression." The room erupted in concerned murmuring. Vixara understood their discomfort. She had felt it too, at first. But now she saw something deeper in these human pastimes. Her presentation was interrupted by an urgent call from Professor Rajesh. "Vixara, you need to see this. There's a situation at the Tokyo Underwater Research Facility." Within hours, Vixara found herself in a submarine, descending toward the facility. A catastrophic failure had trapped 30 researchers in a rapidly flooding section. The rescue submarines couldn't reach them due to electromagnetic interference from the damaged systems. What she witnessed next would become a cornerstone of her research. A team of human freedivers, athletes who specialized in swimming without breathing equipment, volunteered for a rescue attempt. These weren't soldiers or professional rescuers, but civilians who competed in what had seemed to Vixara like another pointlessly dangerous human sport. "Their training allows them to hold their breath for up to 8 minutes, Rajesh explained as they watched the divers prepare. "They regularly practice in conditions that would kill most species." The rescue operation was both terrifying and beautiful to witness. The free divers navigated the dark, freezing waters with practiced ease, their bodies performing feats that should have been impossible. They made multiple trips, each time pushing the limits of human endurance, until all 30 researchers were saved. Later, reviewing the footage, Vixara noticed something remarkable. The movements the divers used to navigate the flooded facility were identical to techniques she'd seen in their competitive events. What had appeared to be a recreational activity had actually been training for exactly this type of crisis. "Computer, cross-reference all documented human sports with emergency response scenarios," she commanded. The results were staggering. Rock climbing techniques used in mountain rescues, parkour movements employed in urban disaster response, combat sports skills applied in civilian protection. "They're not just playing," she muttered, her crystalline form pulsing with revelation. "They're practicing." That evening, she interviewed one of the free divers, a woman named Jun Tanaka, who was still shivering under thermal blankets. "How did you know you could make those repeated dives?" Vixara asked. "The conditions were far worse than any competition." Jun smiled tiredly. "In competition, we dive to challenge ourselves. But humans, we've always known that real challenges don't come with safety measures. So we practice pushing our limits in controlled conditions, making our bodies remember how to function beyond normal parameters." Vixara added a new section to her report that night. Human recreational activities are not, as previously assumed, merely symbolic expressions of their predatory nature. They are sophisticated training systems, constantly preparing humans for potential crisis scenarios. Their sports and games serve as a form of distributed emergency response preparation, ensuring that in any given population, there are humans ready to exceed normal biological limitations when needed. She paused, considering the implications. More remarkably, they appear to have turned their predatory drive for competition into a method for advancing their protective capabilities. Every game, every sport, every seemingly pointless physical challenge is actually part of a vast, informal training network that keeps their protective instincts sharp. As she finished writing, an alert caught her attention. A mountain climbing competition was being held nearby. She decided to attend, no longer seeing it as just a sport, but as a window into humanity's unique approach to survival. After all, she realized, on a death world like Earth, play and preparation had to become one and the same. The question was, what were they ultimately preparing for? The Galactic Council chamber hummed with tension as Dr. Vixara prepared to present her findings. After a year studying humanity, she had been summoned to address growing concerns about Earth's inclusion in interstellar affairs. The recent Helios incident had brought humanity's nature into sharp focus. She showed comparative scans of human brains during different activities: a mother nurturing her child, a soldier defending civilians, a doctor saving lives, an athlete pushing physical limits. The neural patterns were startlingly similar. The same circuits that once made humans apex predators now fuel their drive to protect and nurture. Their predatory instincts haven't disappeared. They've been transformed into something new, something we've never seen before in any species. The display shifted to footage from recent events. Human rescue workers running into burning buildings, scientists working tirelessly to cure alien diseases, diplomats putting themselves in harm's way to prevent conflicts. But here's what truly sets them apart, Vixara continued. Humans can choose when to access these instincts. They're not slaves to their nature. They're its masters. And increasingly, they're choosing to direct their protective instincts toward the galaxy as a whole. A Drachnid representative rose, their scales shimmering with curiosity. The pirates from the Helios incident. They've requested to remain in human custody rather than face our justice system. Why? Because humans understand redemption, Vixara explained. Their protective instincts extend even to former enemies. The pirates aren't being treated as prisoners, but as individuals capable of change. Several have already volunteered for rehabilitation programs. She brought up her final data set, statistics showing increasing collaboration between humans and other species, crime rates dropping in mixed communities, scientific breakthroughs accelerating, diplomatic incidents decreasing. Humanity's greatest achievement isn't their technology or their military prowess, Vixara declared. It's their ability to take the very traits that made them dangerous, their aggression, their competitiveness, their predatory instincts, and transform them into tools for protection and progress. As she concluded her presentation, an emergency alert flashed across the screens. A solar flare had damaged a nearby research station. Without hesitation, humans in the audience began organizing a rescue response, immediately coordinating with alien species present. Vixara watched as the same humans who had been peacefully discussing academic theories moments ago shifted seamlessly into crisis management. But now, after a year of study, she understood what she was seeing. This is who they are, she wrote in her final report. Not predators, not prey, but protectors by choice. They've taken the core paradox of their nature, the ability to be both fierce and gentle, aggressive and nurturing, and turned it into their greatest strength. She added one last observation. Perhaps humanity's true nature isn't found in their capacity for violence or their drive for peace, but in their ability to choose between them. They are neither bound by their predatory past, nor divorced from it. Instead, they've achieved something remarkable. They've learned to use the strengths of their predatory heritage to serve their chosen role as protectors. The report ended with a recommendation: As the galaxy faces unprecedented challenges, we would be wise to not just accept humanity's dual nature, but to embrace it. For in their unique combination of predatory capability and protective choice, we may find exactly what the galaxy needs, a species that knows how to fight, but chooses to protect. As she transmitted her final report, Dr. Vixara watched Earth rotating below the station. The death world that had produced humanity now seemed less like a harsh crucible and more like a sophisticated training ground. It had forged a species that carried within them both the strength to confront the galaxy's dangers and the wisdom to know when not to use it. The question was no longer whether humanity was too dangerous to join galactic society. The question was whether galactic society was ready for what humanity could teach them about the power of choosing to protect rather than simply having the power to destroy.